This is a Scorched Vine and Vin Noir's production of Hope's Nocturne, written by OPL Noir and performed by Kerry Storm. All rights reserved. Chapter 7, Part 2, Hope's Dish Served Cold. This year, they did more than yell, David continued, breaking the silence. Not everyone took part in the shakedown, but Henry and a couple of his sycophants weren't satisfied with just yelling, Jock said, cutting David off. And for some reason, he's fixated on Amanda, Peter explained. He didn't just collar her, push her around, or grab her arm like he did with the others, even the girls. His hands went everywhere on her body. He seems to take some perverse pleasure in cornering her every morning. And not just the first day, Jock finished, his voice grim. Where are the faculty members? Manos yelled. He could feel the muscles in his face turn rigid. His teeth were clenched. He worked hard to control his breathing. What are they doing about this? After a prolonged silence, Peter answered. They warned the parents to walk the first formers into the building on mornings. So nothing. They just turned a blind eye, Manos concluded. It wasn't simply a violation of the code of conduct. It meant a loss of wisdom passed on from the elders to the new initiates. It also meant that these young ones don't see a safe place from which they could glean knowledge, one that had been available to their forebears, but a harsh new reality that they had to run from, he thought. Use your words, not your fists, on the young perv. Manos sang the mantra as he walked toward said perv in the field. Here's your chance, Peter said, breaking off to join the other forwards already huddled. Manos paused as he moved closer to young Henry, the guy's height and size reminding him of last night and Mr. Prescott consuming the space between the doorway. Today, while acting as the seventh forward, he would be expected to confer with the fly half. He would use this opportunity to reason with the young menace. Who goes around being called young anything? He wondered. I'll try to move the line back before securing and passing the ball, he said as he shuffled up alongside the menace. But I was hoping to have a quick word on a matter, Manos asked Henry, backtracking towards the huddle. Try to advance the line by at least a few yards before you pass, Henry said. What do you need? The first formers, Manos said, adjusting his backward gait as Henry slowed. What about them? Henry asked, smirking. I know it's a sixth form tradition to razz the first formers. Manos frowned. But I'm concerned that it's gone a little too far, especially where one first former is concerned. Oh yeah? Henry stopped walking, glaring at Manos as he asked, Which one? What? Is she your sister? He smiled. Amanda Prescott, Manos said, shaking his head, unable to believe the malice he saw now dripping from Henry's smile. And no, she isn't a relative, but you are hurting her. What I do with this first former is none of your business. It's a sixth form matter, and my right. Tilting his head down, Henry leered at Manos. And since she's no relative of yours, I suggest you look the other way. He spat on the ground, dangerously close to Manos's new cleats. Bunch of upstarts coming here like they mean something. This place used to look better, smell better, and stand for something before they soiled its grounds. If she or any other female wants to be here, they need to earn it. Especially illegitimate dregs like her. He moved closer, his nostrils flaring as he leered down at Manos. Mind your own business, preferably before I make it your problem. Manos frowned, nodding to himself as he turned, his fists clenching and unclenching as he ran to his teammates. All while the image of a young 12-year-old girl with orange curls scowled up at him. Then the image of that same girl, shoulders straight, head high, walking through a minefield of jeers from adults, filled his mind. A young girl who with one word soothed a boundless night within him, causing hope to stir. Then the sight of that same girl, face bruised and bloodied, all because of that brute's inability to discern what he was and wasn't entitled to, fueled his red haze. How does joy, peace, and hope survive the harsh reality of life in the shadow of monsters like this? he wondered as he joined his teammates in the huddle. The sight of his sister crouched under his grandmother's arms filled his field of vision as he blindly relayed the parasite's instructions to his teammates. Watching her cower from the many vipers surrounding them as they suffered through his mother's wake had buffeted against what was left of his soul. A function meant to solemnly celebrate the life of the woman he held most dear had been marred by leeches who, like the leech on this field, refused to respect boundaries and didn't appreciate that they weren't entitled to be there. When nothing is done, even when they're exposed to the light of reason, he thought as he engaged the other side. He felt gutted and found himself reverting to tactics he used on the field on the first day. Am I destined to lurk on the boundaries of life? Am I to exist only in the night? He wondered as he charged his counterpart, shoulder first, with the full weight of his body. Gone was his buoyancy over the sunlight and mountains of a moment ago. His steps were heavy, pounding through grass as he set in his position in the scrum. The gains he'd made were now lost to the rhythmic throb of his blood, like a metronome in his tightened chest, pumping through his rage-saturated brain. Alongside his teammates, he jostled shoulders, elbows, and foreheads with their opponents when they got in his way. Both sides advanced and surrendered inches on the pitch as they battled for control of the ball. Manos felt as if he'd surrendered ground, that his hope once again slept. Steam from their breaths and bodies mingled with the iron-tinged sweat in the air. And angry, static-filled buzz filled his ears, mingled with coated grunts and growls around him. Snorts accompanied by the sound of crackling frost-hardened grass under his shoes as their struggle echoed off the nearby limestone buildings that bordered the field. Manos once again grappled with his emotions for a sense of reason. Did you ever wonder what gave so many the will and the tenacity to survive where there was no hope? The sound of his uncle's voice echoed through his thoughts as his rage over his failed attempt at diplomacy reached its tipping point. They somehow found the will to survive, despite the fact that their entire existence was one big nightmare with no end in sight. It's not just that their way out was taken away from them, but also that their will to live transcended their daily existence. Do you get what I'm saying? Their will to survive overrode their need for relief. Now, I suspect that they were somehow able to hold on to hope for their next generation. It's time to swim, little minnow. This struggle is about legacy. Your family's, yours, and your mother's, and what the guild considers their right to that legacy. Now, in the face of so much hope and responsibility, you never have the luxury of sinking. So swim. With sweat running down the sides of his face, Manos heaved as feet and elbows maneuvered for inches gained. When he saw that Peter had possession of the ball and the try line was mere inches behind their opponent's front row, he eyed young Henry in his periphery. "Pass the ball, then feign left," he yelled to Peter and the other forwards on his left. With the ball firmly in his grasp, Manos whipped his right hand as far back as it could go, not stopping until he felt the snap and heard the crunch of bone, followed by the wail of pain. Turning toward Peter, he yelled, "Pass made! Run to intercept! Time out!" The referee yelled, "Man down!" As mayhem broke out on the field, Manos's red haze began to fade. The coach screamed an expletive-laced tirade at his assistants as everyone around him slowly thawed from their shock. He tried to avoid the open-mouthed gazes from everyone now circling them. He glanced up at the mountains and the black-eyed Susans. Watching light glimmer off the patch of intense yellow reminded him that the sun still shined. "I hope, Mom, if you're watching," Manos thought, smiling, "that you saw that I technically didn't use my fist." He looked down at the worm wriggling around in the muddy grass. He hadn't intended to strike Henry as hard as he did. But he'd been well beyond angry. He passed seething about 5 seconds into their conversation. Now the young menace lay on the pitch, wailing like a banshee, curled in on himself in the fetal position, his hands clutched to his face, blood pouring between his fingers. Maybe I shouldn't have looked the other way, Manos said. We at Vin Noirs would like to thank you for listening to Hope's Nocturne with us. This was the last chapter and section of Opus 1. We will be taking some time off, but will resume this time videos in March when we will attempt to explain what was going on in Miss Noir's head for each chapter. And we hope you will not only join us for those videos, but for Opus 2, which thankfully we have dissuaded her from calling it Hope's Requiem, but Hope's Etude. See you soon. By the way, remember, the book is on sale at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You can also get it on Kindle.